Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Kyle Mox. I'm Associate Dean for National Scholarships at Arizona State University, and I am the Director of the Office of National Scholarships Advisement, otherwise known as the Lorraine W. Frank Office of National Scholarships Advisement, which can be a bit of a mouthful. But today, this is the first of a four-part Fellowships Fridays in February. Someone who loves alliteration, I couldn't pass it up. And it's a four-part series really focusing on some broader topics in competitive fellowships. So today we're talking about prestigious postgraduate fellowships. I can only get two parts of the alliteration there, but these are awards for international study, domestic study, but all for awards that would start up following your graduation from undergraduate. So that's our category for today. It's a pretty straightforward discussion. Today we're going to define national scholarships. Some of you, I recognize some names in the group, and some of you already have a good familiarity with these awards. Some of you, this might be the first time you're encountering this category of award. And we'll talk a little bit about what services ANSA, the Office of National Scholarships, provides to students at ASU. And we'll talk about reasons why you should even be doing this at all. And while we're doing that, we'll even talk about why you shouldn't. And good chunk of time, majority of our time, we actually be buzzing through some major awards, and then we'll talk about where do we go from here. All right. So in the old U.S. Army approach to public speaking, I've told you what I'm going to tell you, then I'm going to tell you, and then I'll tell you what I told you. So the term national scholarships is a term that we use and is generally used to refer to a class of awards that a lot of other people will call fellowships, some people will call grants, and so on and so forth. But generally speaking, these are awards for folks from all over the United States, and they're generally merit-based. All of the awards that we're going to talk about today are generally merit-based, meaning that your execution of the scholarship and your ability to meet the selection criteria are what matters more than anything else. So what they consider meritorious varies by program, and that's where my job comes in. But they're highly competitive because they're being competed for at a national or international level. And so there could be hundreds, if not thousands, of folks applying for these awards. And that means that you are in a very large pool, and therefore you need to be putting your best effort in here because these are highly competitive, and that's why we're here, to help you be as competitive as possible. They are generally offered to students at all different levels of their journey. The awards that we're talking about today are generally going to be offered to or open to students who will have a bachelor's degree by the time the grant period starts. So in most cases, you would be applying at the start of your senior year. So this talk today is ideal for juniors, right? College juniors, people that are just starting to turn their attention towards what happens after graduation. But it's certainly useful for younger students who want to take a longer view of things. We'd love that. And seniors and recent graduates, right? We work with a ton of alumni. You don't have to currently be enrolled at ASU to make use of our advising services. We're happy to help. But all of these awards are outside of ASU. None of them are specifically associated with ASU. In fact, every school or university, college or university in the US can usually apply or send students to these. And most of these you can just apply for directly, even without telling us, which I wouldn't advise, or getting help from us, which I certainly wouldn't advise. So because they are so selective, they tend to be very prestigious. If we're looking at resume lines, it's an incredible opportunity to put on there something that has a 1 or a 3 or a 5 or a 10% selection rate. That tells the reader of your resume or the reader of your dossier, like, hey, here's somebody that's demonstrated to this other really illustrious group that they have the merit to succeed. Prestige is just one part of it, and I have my own issues with that word prestige because it can be encoded as saying elite or exclusive, which are words that we don't tend to care for at ASU. But I can't deny the fact that winning one of these awards is going to open a lot of doors for you. So because they're coming from all different funding sources, right? Some of them are federal awards coming from U.S. federal agencies. Some are coming from overseas governments. Some are coming from nonprofit organizations. There's no way to generalize about them. They all have very different requirements, different timelines, different materials, but there are some commonalities. I would group them into sort of four major types of awards, or four, I would say, purposes for existence. Fellowships exist, generally speaking, to fulfill a specific need. There are no fellowships, national scholarships out there that exist simply to give money to students, right? That's not a complex enough purpose for an agency or a nonprofit or a great patron to offer this kind of funding. So essentially, whoever has decided to invest this money has said there is a need or a gap that we need to fill, or there are certain behaviors I want to promote, or there are a type of students that I want to help support. So that's our first task, is to think, okay, what is the purpose? So they could exist to support opportunities for research or training. Maybe they want to get you involved in STEM research, or they want to provide an opportunity to bring overseas students into labs in their own country. The US government has a lot of awards available for critical language study, because we need people who are familiar with foreign cultures and are conversant in foreign languages. Research-based graduate degrees, these are difficult. They can be a challenging road. A lot of people get discouraged. And so when the funding makes this an easier path, then we can guarantee a nice pipeline of talented researchers. And ambassadorial sort of exchange, international exchange, is a big reason for a lot of these different fellowships. You'll notice that almost, a good chunk of them are intended for international exchange, helping US students go abroad and have some kind of experience, whether that could be simple study abroad programs or shorter term educational programs where we're studying a language, or maybe longer ones, right? The Fulbright, for instance, which we'll talk about quite a bit, is generally 9 to 10 months to a year or even longer. So that's a more substantial experience. And that more substantial experience is going to increase the likelihood of you developing that cultural competency. And the longer you spend abroad, the more likely you are to develop proficiency in a foreign language. I had meant to mention at the outset here that, all the photos that we're seeing today aren't just eye candy. I didn't get them from Shutterstock or anything like that. These are actual ASU students and graduates who have won all the awards that we're talking about today. Any of them would be happy to talk to you about their own experience and provide advice as best they can, keeping in mind, of course, their experience is singular. They only know how they won. But if you want to know more about what the experience is like, or what it's like studying at Oxford, or what it's like teaching English in Thailand, I really encourage you to seek them out or come to me and say, okay, is there anybody that's done this that you'd suggest I talk to? Our alumni network is incredibly valuable, right? And I hope you all become a part of it. While money is not the major benefit of most of the awards, it really is the experience that you get out of it, both applying, but also the experience that the fellowship provides you. I can't deny the fact that most of them are incredibly generous in terms of the funding. Some of them upwards of over $100,000. They could get you, provide full cost of attendance at graduate study, top performing STEM programs, put you into high level positions in public service. There were a lot of people that are working in kind of public sector jobs can find a lot of great fellowships out there. People that want to become foreign service officers, thought leaders, things like that. So both Frank and Aaron in this picture here are public servants. Both of them work in the federal government. Aaron's currently working as a program director in Kristen Sinema's office, and Frank, I believe, is a legislative affairs officer right now. So both of them working in our federal government after having been Marshall Scholars, right? And I can't deny the fact as well, talking about experience, many of these programs also have a strong leadership component, professional development component to them. And so a big benefit that you receive from these is being in a cohort with other people who also have the merit to have been awarded one of these. So you get to meet some really wonderful people, develop a really wonderful network of like-minded individuals. But also, particularly for the ones coming from federal agencies, they are looking to help you develop professionally towards specific career goals. And so part of that is help with employment. Part of that is just access to further opportunities. And like I said, that network is going to open doors. As challenging as they are, on the balance, we've done quite well as an institution. ASU is actually a top performer among national scholarships, particularly for large public universities. Unsurprisingly, a lot of these awards are going to students who already attend highly exclusive, elite, prestigious schools. ASU does not measure our success on whom we exclude, but by whom we include and how we help them succeed. And here's a really good example of that. In the past decade alone, we've had 3 Rhodes Scholars and 5 Marshall Scholars. These are, premier fellowships that are very difficult to get. 6 Gates Cambridge Scholars, which is remarkable. I think maybe there's just a couple of Ivy League schools that have been performing at that level. 180 Fulbright Scholars, right? That number actually places us as the 2nd highest performing public university overall, behind only the University of Michigan, which has an admission rate that is less than 1/4 of ours. We admit close to 84% of students who apply for admission to ASU, yet we perform at a level of a university that admits only 10% of its students, right, or applicants. I love bragging about that ratio because it demonstrates exactly what we promise here, is that we can do excellence to scale. If our students are willing to put in the effort, we are willing to put in the support. And what does that look like at onset? Well, things like we're doing right now, general information sessions, but we also do group webinars, we do writing workshops. We do, we'll be doing some boot camps later on in the semester to help people get started with Fulbright, wide range of different modes and modalities. But a lot of the work actually is one-on-one. So we have a whole team of advisors, myself included, that works with students and alumni who are applying for these awards to make sure all of your questions are answered, that you thoroughly understand the context, you thoroughly understand the criteria and the process. And then as you are working on your materials, you can be sending those to us for feedback and review. A good chunk of what we do is writing instruction. So these application essays are an unusual genre. All right, I almost said unique, but each one is slightly different. Each one has a slightly different purpose. And so we do the best we can to help you understand, how do we write to this particular audience in a way that's going to present yourself in the best possible light. Many of these awards also have interviews, some of them a little higher stakes and more intense than we would like, but we help you prepare. And I think the current record for practice interviews is held by Erin Schulte, who was on the previous slide. She completed 13 practice interviews with us over 2 years. And finally, something stuck, and she was selected as a Marshall Scholar. And she will admit that was the most challenging part for her, was preparing for interviews. But we'll do as much as it takes to help you feel comfortable. We organize the campus committees that do select our nominees for those types of awards. And we even work with faculty to help them write better letters of recommendation and to help them mentor students and to help them identify candidates. So, as we think about this is a complex and kind of confusing area. I've got a lot of decisions to make. I got a lot of homework to do. Why would I want to apply? Besides the obvious of there's a monetary benefit. Right. So I actually excerpted some responses to our post-applicant surveys. Every year we survey applicants who apply for our major awards, and we ask them, and one of the questions we ask, regardless of the final outcome, would you agree or disagree that the process of applying for a competitive fellowship is a beneficial experience? 65% of our students in the 21-22 cycle strongly agreed, and 22% agreed. So nearly 90% of the students who applied for a major fellowship agreed that, yeah, regardless of outcome, this was a beneficial experience. And these are some of the unsolicited, well, they were solicited, they're optional comments that they made on that. Yeah, I'll be able to use this writing in all my future graduate applications and for my own personal self-reflection. Another applicant says, yeah, it was exhausting, but now I have a good network of professors with letters of recommendation loaded, ready to go. It also helped me think harder about what I want to do with my life, which they had been avoiding. Applying for fellowships is a great way to kickstart that personal work that you need to do to get to that next phase, rather than kicking that can down the road. You say, you know what, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to chart out the next couple of years. One applicant had applied for other awards in the past, and they said, I've applied for fellowships and been denied, but I feel like each time I do it, it allows me to not only become more competitive for the next fellowship, but to shed light on what I want to achieve as a student. Our individual identities evolve over time. They're created. We figure out how to package them in these particular contexts, and you do grow and change, right? This applicant says, I feel that I've grown a lot through the process. I feel proud of the work I put in, knowing that I challenged myself and worked really hard. And that right there encapsulates the secret to ASU success. I get people from all over the country reaching out and saying, you know, Kyle, how is it you all do so well at Fulbright? And the answer is, well, we just work really, really hard at it. There's no secret, there's no shortcuts. So regardless of the outcome, I was able to prove to myself that I have accomplished some great things and I have the potential to accomplish even more. Yeah, it's an opportunity to stop, stand, look back and see where you come from and turn back around and look at where you're going. And the last comment I included here, process of applying taught me how to write a different type of essay, forced me to reflect back on my life experiences and make connections between my past and present in ways that I had never thought about before. So applying for the Fulbright ET was definitely a growth experience for me. And again, these are unedited, taken verbatim from the surveys. So these are not taken from a survey. These are reasons you shouldn't apply for a major fellowship. I just need money. Like whatever you got, I'll apply for it. Casting a wide net and sort of shotgunning it is not a good approach, right? Because these awards take a lot of work. It's a lot of effort, not just for you, but for me, your faculty, the other advisors, everyone involved in the process. There's a lot of labor involved. And if we're just blindly applying for things, it's not the best use of your time. I don't know what to do after graduation. I think that's a good reason to maybe get started, right? But you're not going to get very far in the application simply because you've avoided making decisions about what life holds for you in the next phase, right? You can't actually get very far if you're not willing to at least engage in the thought experiment of what could I do with what I know and what I'm able to do. I think being a Rhodes Scholar, Marshall Scholar, Fulbright Scholar, whatever, will help me get a great consulting job, get into a top 5 law firm, increase my odds in med school admission, et cetera. If you get into this process superficially, right, just, you know, from a mercenary standpoint, you want to play all the angles, you want to make every statistically, good choice. I've had, people actually just kind of misrepresent themselves in an application, right? And telling them what they think the audience wants to hear. It never works. It just never works. These applications are too thorough. These committees are too smart. And the writing will just not stick if you're not applying this, because if you're applying from a position where you do not align well with the mission of the particular fellowship. People just looking for gap years, right? Yeah, many of these programs are a great gap year, but a gap year implies that there's something on the other side, right? You have a mission, you have a focus. People, when people say gap year to me, a lot of the times I interpret that as number 2. I don't know what to do next, right? Applying for an award that has an 8% selection rate is not really a statistically great way to kill that year. My parents want me to. Thankfully, I've never had a lot of parents show up in my office or email or call, but occasionally, I can tell that we're working with candidates that are applying for reasons outside of their own motivation. And lastly, I want to show all those jerks from high school that I'm better than they are. Now, I'm actually going to say that's not a bad reason to apply. I would support that reason if you just want to get revenge on people. But again, it's got to be an internal motivation. It's got to be something that you feel because you align with the mission of the program. So inevitably, at some point in the conversation, you're going to ask, am I really a good applicant for this? And the imposter syndrome is real, right? And it doesn't go away. It gets quieter, but even up into my 40s, I'm still questioning, did somebody make a mistake? Should I have gotten this job? Do I belong here at all? They're all going to figure out I really don't know what I'm talking about, right? So the voices get quieter, but part of the game is to figure out, am I doing the right thing, right? Am I in the right place? Have I put myself in the right room? The one thing to consider is that every single applicant is unique, right? We will try to figure out, what is the best way to present you as an applicant to this particular audience, so they understand that, yes, you earnestly care about their mission. Yes, you meet their criteria, and yes, you're gonna make good use of the award that you're given. We'll break it down here in the next few slides about what is it they really look at. But again, all of these awards are looking at slightly different things. They have slightly different priorities. But generally speaking, yeah, they want to look at your academic achievement. That's more or less important in some contexts. Almost all of them are looking at service and leadership. And again, their definition of that varies by award. All of them, however, want to know, what is your purpose? They want to see a purposeful application. If you cannot articulate to them what the long-term objective here is, they don't know if they even want to give this to you, because they don't know what you're going to use it for. And I'd like to hear, if I give this award to this student, that they are going to make the best use of this, right? They're trying to figure out where to place their bets. So will this fellowship, if I give it to this person, will it accelerate their ability to make improvements in the world? That's what most of them are looking at, because most of these awards are really a make the world a better place kind of thing. So, Chantel is a great example. She's actually one of our Zimbabwean Rhodes Scholarship recipients. Before she was out of school at ASU, she had already laid the groundwork and started a school for young girls in Zimbabwe, right? And sat on a couple of UN humanitarian commissions for young people and things like that, right? The selectors for the Rhodes Scholarship knew that if they selected this ASU Justice Studies major, that it was going to hyper accelerate her ability to have a positive impact on the world. So academics, right? How much does it matter? It's a question I get all the time. It just depends on the award, right? So something like the Rhodes or Marshall Scholarship, it needs to be at least a 3.7. If you're at the 3.7, you're already at a disadvantage because everyone else in the competition's already got a 4.0. Facts, right? It's basic economics. There's an overabundance of qualified applicants for many of these awards, and therefore they're looking for ways to shrink it. So if you're at the bottom edge of an eligibility range, you need to figure out, okay, how do I compensate for that? Have I done extraordinarily well in other areas? For other awards like Fulbright, there is no minimum GPA. Again, it will depend on the award. If you're applying for a Fulbright UK award with a 3.0, it's very competitive. That might be a problem. And that's kind of the nuance that, you have to rely on us to help you figure out. Grade trends matter. The types of courses that you're taking matter. A 4.0 with a bunch of pretty obvious fluff, and a lot of online classes you cram together in A and B semesters. That kind of comes through, as opposed to somebody that's maybe picked up a couple of majors. There's been a real trend. Maybe it was a pandemic thing, but a lot of our major award winners the last couple of years have had at least 2 majors, a couple of certificates, things like that. They're doing interesting combinations of things. But beyond the transcript, they want to see your intellect in action, right? They want to know, are you trying to participate in the discourse? Are you going to conferences? Are you trying to get your voice published? Or giving poster presentations, getting involved in research experiences, things like that. In the case of somebody like Alex, he was a student regent with the Board of Regents. He was making a documentary as part of his senior honors thesis. He wanted to get his voice out there. Leadership, such a difficult word. What does that mean exactly? Well, to generalize, they want to see emphasis on the impact of your leadership. And also, if you're a leader, who's following? That's the other question I ask all the time. So like Katie, for instance, who was just selected as a Marshall Scholar for this year, she led a couple different teams towards specific projects, right? So one was winning the X Prize challenge for the next gen face masks. Was at the start of the pandemic. So she and her team developed a $1 million prize winning face mask design that didn't fog up glasses. In another case, she's working to help put in water sanitation technologies into rural villages, right? And in other cases, she's just working with 4-H groups, right? So there's a lot of different types of leadership, but they want to see very succinctly, can you tell me what was accomplished because of your leadership? Being the first person to show up, being the person who does all the work, being the person who just has great ideas doesn't necessarily constitute leadership. They want to see, are you an agent of change? Like, if we invest in you, are you going to pivot on this, and are you going to leverage the award and the benefits you've been given to have a positive influence on society? So as we start thinking about your resume and CV, we want to connect the dots and see, okay, how does this tell a cohesive story? And that's where the unity of purpose comes in. Part of our strategy is to help you decode the application. There are the clearly outlined eligibility criteria that are non-negotiable. There are the selection criteria, which tend to be subjective, right? And so we need to read in between these lines to think, okay, this is one of those criteria. This is what they think of as an example of that. Where in the application can I best showcase that? Let's be strategic about where we place this information. A big part of that is understanding, why does this program exist in the first place? And so as we're thinking through, that's a big part of what we'll do. And personal statements. Every award that we're talking about today, I might be wrong, I'll let you know if I'm wrong as we start going through the programs, but I'm pretty sure that every single award that we're talking about today has some variation of a personal statement, meaning a short written essay in which you convey to them something about your own personal background, your educational goals, where you're trying to go in the future, how this relates, what's important to you, your values, that kind of thing. These are incredibly challenging because you likely have written only one or two of them so far in your life. You don't ever write them for your classes. You don't ever get graded on them. So that's what we're here for, is to really help make sure you write a good statement that's going to help you achieve the task. I'll mention this early and often, but letters of recommendation do matter an incredible amount. The Rhodes Scholarship, which is the one everyone gets all excited about, requires at least 5 and accepts as many as 8 letters of recommendation. That is a little excessive, but it's also part of what makes the Rhodes unique. They're looking for people that have had an incredible impact on their communities. And Rhodes Scholars tend to have influence on multiple communities, whereas other ones might be just 2 or 3. That's fine, don't panic, right? But these are essential to every fellowship, right? They want some evidence from someone they consider to be a colleague. Can this applicant do what they promised to do? Do they have the qualifications? What are they like as a person? Tell me, dear friend, should I select this person? We'll do a lot of work with you in thinking through this strategically. We'll coach you on how to make the ask, how to best approach somebody, even if you've just gotten to know them, and how to help them prepare to write a great letter of recommendation for you. And again, we'll also help you figure out who's credible and valid for this particular situation. Just because you've used somebody for one situation doesn't necessarily mean that they are a suitable recommender for another situation. So our website is a resource for a lot of these different awards. And so if you're just getting started, you're just getting in at the ground floor, we do have a start here category. You can take a look there and just kind of familiarize yourself. But this presentation, I hope, is doing a good job of that. There's also a scholarships database, which you see just to the left of that next to the home icon. There you can do a quick database search. We'll take a look at that in a moment. If you're not on the bulletin, I assume you're on the bulletin. If you're here, you probably subscribed some time ago and saw this coming up, and we're very excited to participate in the first session of Fellowship Fridays in February. And then links to our YouTube channel there, which where we archive most of our presentations and other things that we think are useful. And LinkedIn, which is great for alumni networking, and Slack, oddly enough, which students never really take that much advantage of, but you can pop on there anytime, join the ANSA Slack channel and ask us questions and get them answered right away in real time, right? I'm surprised how few students take advantage of it. We use Slack a ton. The scholarship database, it's not a massive database by database standards. It's 90 to 100 awards, which is a lot to read through, right? So you can actually use this to narrow down based on, where you are in your career right now. Are you somebody that would, are you looking for awards where financial need is a component of criteria? Are you looking for international travel and so on and so forth? And it can help you shrink down. And this is important because, we want you, when you come to us, to have some concept of what it is, where should we start? We got to have a starting point rather than just, Dr. Mox, tell me what you think I'd be good for, right? That's my least favorite conversation. So, all right. Now we're going to talk about what are some key awards. And these are ones I'd like to highlight. I am going to share with you in follow-up email an actual handout that goes a little more into detail on these awards. So expect that via email coming up. But I just want to highlight some names, get some name recognition, and get your minds going to think about which of these awards might be a good choice for you. The first category are graduate awards for UK or Ireland. These are a highly visible, what I would call a marquee opportunity. These are the ones where we get a lot of news articles about. The president's office gets very excited, because they're cool. They're exciting. But it's a really great opportunity to put yourself in a trajectory that not a lot of people have the opportunity to do, right? So the first subcategory, I would say, are fellowships that are tenable at multiple universities. So the Marshall Scholarship would pay for generally 2 years of graduate study, which in most cases would be 2 different master's degrees. And you can apply this anywhere in the United Kingdom. So you could spend 1 year at Leeds and another year at Cambridge, which is exactly what Katie's going to do. So she's going to do 1 year two different master's programs. Frank, for instance, did 1 year in London, I forget which of the London schools, and then his second year he did at Oxford. The Mitchell Scholarship is a 1 year program for one master's degree, but that can be used anywhere on the island of Ireland, so in the Republic of Ireland or Northern Ireland. And then Fulbright, there are over 40 awards for graduate study in the UK through the Fulbright program, so a lot of options there. There are a bunch of other UK and Irish awards that are specific, attached to specific universities. So the Rhodes, as fancy as it is really only tenable at Oxford, which is great if you find something at Oxford that interests you. And so there's Aaron and Ngoni, one of our other Rhodes scholars at Oxford University, right, taking the obligatory pitchfork photo. That's the first question I would have for somebody when they want to come talk about the Rhodes. I was like, okay, what do you want to study at Oxford? The Erdogan is actually for people in the humanities that want to study at Oxford, NIH OxCam, National Institutes of Health. So if you are pursuing either PhD or MD PhD in an NIH sort of oriented line of inquiry, this is a really great accelerated way to get the PhD portion of it done in as few as 3 years. And you would actually do the PhD at Oxford or Cambridge. Pershing Square is a MBA +1 program, really directed at people working in the public sector, nonprofit, social justice kind of areas. So you can pick one master's program at Oxford plus their MBA at the Said Business School. Gates Cambridge, yeah, actually Bill and Melinda Gates, or I guess now maybe just Bill Gates, is the primary funder for that. Any graduate program at Cambridge, which is a pretty wide range. And then if you're a STEM student, you could also apply for Churchill, which is for 1 year of STEM master's degree at Cambridge University. There are an increasing number of awards for graduate study around the world. It's just become more accessible. And I think graduate education around the world has become better respected in the global market and in the US. So a lot of these awards have popped up in the last 5 to 10 years. The newest of these is the McCall-McBain Scholarship at McGill, if that wasn't confusing enough. But it's basically like the Gates Cambridge. You can do any graduate program you want at McGill University, which is one of the best research universities in the world, and certainly among the top couple highly respected universities in Canada. It's open both to Canadians and to non-Canadians. If you're interested in China at all, and both the Schwarzman and Yenqing do not require any previous knowledge of Mandarin, which is kind of cool. But the trick of it is you need to talk about how your future career interests relate to China and why that's important. So Schwarzman is sponsored by US investors. Yenqing is sponsored by Chinese investors. Both are very similar. Schwarzman's at Tsinghua University and Yenqing is at Peking University, both in Beijing. So we have had winners of both of those awards in recent years. If you have some German, you can do graduate study in Germany through the DOD, the German Academic Exchange Service. And again, Fulbright, there are dozens and dozens of awards specifically for graduate degree completion in various countries around the world. I get a lot of questions from students about graduate study in the US. And honestly, there aren't a lot of options because the way things work in the US is that, one, education is way more expensive than it needs to be. I'm just putting that out there. Two, a lot of the funding is coming from your home institution. So if you apply for a PhD program, the expectation is that you would get funding from that PhD program, at least for tuition. You might get an assistantship, things like that. But that being said, there are a few awards of note. The Knight-Hennessy Scholars Program is full tuition for any graduate or professional degree at Stanford. Now, as generous and shiny as that is, yes, that's a very competitive award. We've had several finalists for that award. It's only about 5 years old, but we haven't yet notched a winner for that. So hopefully one of you could be the first. The McDowell International Scholars Program, very similar to Knight-Hennessy, but it's at Washington University in St. Louis, another really wonderful school with wonderful graduate programs. Sandvid Scholars just started up, I think this is the 3rd year, but this is looking for young leaders, change makers, people with a very strong social justice bent to them. And it does include, and it will fund MD and JD degrees. If you're pursuing a PhD in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, or even many social sciences or science education, you should apply for the NSF Graduate Research Fellowship Program. I forgot to scratch Ford Foundation because this year was the last year for that program. So just scratch that, forget about that one. And then the Soros Fellowship for New Americans. And that's specifically full fund, basically full funding for any postgraduate program for someone that would be considered a new American, either because you were born abroad yourself or one or both of your parents were born abroad. There are multiple programs for teaching. Chief among them, the Fulbright English Teaching Assistantship. Most of these awards don't necessarily expect a very strong background in teaching or linguistics or TESOL or anything like that. They're mostly looking for people that would just really be good ambassadors. So as gap year experiences go, these are wonderful if you're somebody that really wants a cultural exchange opportunity as part of your personal and professional growth. So and we have students who apply for multiple of these awards. If you are interested in foreign service, language study, things like that, kind of government-y or government adjacent careers, the Critical Language Scholarship, you can actually apply for that in your senior year and take it up the summer after you graduate. You can apply for the Bourne Awards if you'd like a semester or year-long language study program. And then if you are interested in the foreign service, the Pickering, Rangel, and Payne is the way to go. Right, they're basically going to give you $30,000 to pursue a master's degree that leads to the foreign service, and then you get to bypass the foreign service officer test, and they guarantee you employment. Nice deal. We do really well with this one. ASU students are very service oriented. We're also very globally oriented, and so we are a very natural breeding ground for future foreign service officers. So, popular award for us. I've mentioned Fulbright several times. Reason being, it's our largest program. We had 74 applicants this past year. We're usually in the 50 to 80 range for this. Again, we're a top producer in the US for this. It's very flexible. It's adaptable. It's going to meet you where you're at. So your odds of success have entirely to do with the choices that you make in the application, the choices and type of grant and destination, but also in how you present yourself. And so again, it's labor intensive and we're here to help with that. So we aren't yet to the start of the next cycle for Fulbright, but Fulbright Day is our kickoff event for that. That'll be March 29. It's a hybrid event. We'll have an in-person presentation, panel discussion, things like that. So you know how to register for events or you wouldn't be here. And if you'd like to participate in Fulbright Day, I strongly encourage you to do that. So, all right, now what? We just got a drink from the fire hose. Our heads are spinning. Where do we go from here? Well, the first thing I would really say is that you need to get a better grip on your objective. And I might even make this objectives, right? There are several possible ways you could go from here. Like if I were to get a Fulbright, I might go this direction. If I were to get a Pickering, I would go this direction. And so thinking about, what is your long-term objective? And we need to make it as specific as possible. And that really helps us decide what awards are appropriate for you. Do peruse the database, right? Get a starter list together. Look at the handout I'm going to send you and circle the ones that most interest you. And at least that'll give us some indication of what your goals are, what your interests are. Do start taking note of the deadlines, right? We are at the opposite side of most deadlines. For most postgraduate awards, deadlines are going to be late summer, early fall, August, September, October, kind of in that range. So they can complete their selection process and cycles in time for you to make choices about graduate school and employment and things like that. So that being the case, as I mentioned, if it's very competitive, it's probably going to require a lot of labor. And if it requires a lot of labor, we do that over several months as opposed to 1 or 2 weeks. And so we do get started on a lot of these programs in the spring. And read the scholar profiles. I can't emphasize that enough. If they have bios of their recent winners up on the site, take a look at those. And sort of gird yourself. It is going to be intimidating, or the imposter syndrome is going to flare up pretty badly at this point. But any of you who is in this room right now, if we were to write a 100-word biography of you, I promise you somebody else would be really impressed by that as well. So what you want to look at is sort of trends, and get a sense of what type of people do they seem to be looking for. Not necessarily matching your achievement to their achievement, but how does this program seem to define leadership? What kind of characteristics do they have in common? If you're thinking about the prestigious Rhodes and Marshall and Mitchell programs, the big UK Irish programs, Again, this is a long cycle. We'll be doing a kickoff event in March, an event we call the British Tea. No offense to Ireland, we could include Ireland as there as well. What we try to do there is get alumni actually together on a panel to talk about their own experiences with these awards. Through March, April, and May, you will be coming in to get started. You'll meet with me and we'll figure out what's a good strategy, what's what steps do I need to take to get myself closer to being competitive for this, and leading up to an August 1st intent to apply deadline. That's basically so we know who's coming to dinner. And obviously a lot of work needs to happen between March and August. Our campus deadline is middle of August, and most of the deadlines for these are late September. So the Fulbright deadline is actually pretty similar. So it's not unusual that we have students applying for both. Our Fulbright Day event is the 29th. Around March 31, the application actually does open, and we'll begin a Fulbright boot camp series. These are 3-week sessions where we'll help you through the process of picking a country and a grant type and getting started. We'll also have a very thorough intake system this year. And so we can assure you that you'll be well prepared by the time you start. Our campus deadline, we haven't actually picked the specific date, but it'll be around the 12th. It's usually around the 12th and the 15th. And the national deadline, I don't think they've announced yet, but it'll be around a month later from our campus deadline. And then, yeah, we are in notification period right now. We're waiting for our first good bit of good news, and hopefully we'll get some soon. The other thing I copied for you, because I thought you all would find it interesting, is advice from people that have submitted applications. And so if you notice, there's a trend. Start early. Start the process early. Start early. Listen to ANSA. But trust your gut in that. Make sure it reflects you so that it feels right and it feels like uniquely you. If you're unsure about your future goals, just keep writing drafts and narrowing down your answers. So yeah, you don't have to have all the answers right here, right now, but we need a starting point and trust the process. And if we approach this earnestly, it'll be productive. Set deadlines of what you want to accomplish by when. Absolutely, it should be a systematic process. You're going to be taking on basically another class here. Start early and revise. Unseen connections and parallels between one's various interests and abilities often arise only after substantial contemplation and revisions. That was a very elegant way of saying, yeah, it's a process of self-discovery. Again, follow your gut instincts. Trust yourself, right? A lot of our applicants say that is, I'm here to help guide you, but I'm not submitting this application. I'm not the one that has to say yes or no. So you decide. You own the application. We're just here to help. Make sure that you're applying for things that you're passionate about. Budget plenty of time for essay revisions. Understand that obtaining your final draft is a slow process. It requires deep personal reflection, and it shouldn't be rushed, right? So we can't pound this out in a couple of weeks. And the last one is kind of big, but I like this one. Do not talk yourself out of applying, right? Every single winner that you'll talk to will just say the same thing. Like, I didn't think I could win this, and I just decided just to go for it, right? And they'll tell everyone, just try, just go for it, just do it, right? And it's challenging and to go after what we think we're worth, but invite these feelings as opportunities. Know that the outcomes of a fellowship do not define you. While these fellowships are certainly capable of accelerating the change that you want to see in the world and spreading the knowledge you wish to share, know that if you do not receive a competitive fellowship, you are still able to make change. I would tell future applicants to start early and to really approach this experience with an open mind. Do not be afraid to give an honest effort, and the art of writing is rewriting. So all wonderful advice. And again, I copied that verbatim, didn't change a word. So what's next for you all? So start doing your work, your research, start making your list, start looking at potential opportunities that would support what you're trying to do. Reach out to me via email once you have a question in mind, right? Our meetings will be most productive if we have a starting point. So when you email me, at least mention the awards that you're most interested in. That might change. We might add or subtract awards from that list depending on the outcome of our conversations. It's helpful to me if you can include transcripts and a resume, so I have some background on you and I can see if you have enough of the right types of experiences for this award. And then once we're ready to meet, you can schedule appointments right from our website. There's a big button right on the front page. And our goal is, to end the term with a plan for the summer. Like, are you going to be drafting? Are you going to be planning? What else needs to happen? So peace out. There is one of our Fulbright winners in Taiwan with her students. So I'm having a terrible time, as you can see how miserable she is. So let me pause there. Questions that you all have for me at this point, again, you can pop them in the chat. You're welcome to raise a hand or just unmute yourself. Anything you're wondering that I could answer for you right now? Always hard to read the room on Zoom. I don't know if you have a quizzical expression right now or if you're just sitting there waiting to go. So again, I know it's a lot of information. We're at the wide end of the funnel, as I call it, right? You know, we have to collect our thoughts and start putting together a process. We have 3 more of these sessions. One will be focused specifically on what we call gap year experiences. So a little wider view. You know, some of these are not technically fellowships. Some of them aren't even things that we work with, but really thinking about how can we fill time between one experience and another experience. One of our other sessions will be specifically on STEM awards. So if you're a STEM major, that's one to consider. And then the third one, or the fourth one, global. Yeah, we're going to focus specifically and go take a deeper dive on things like Fulbright and Schwarzman and really drill into those awards. So if you want to investigate those further. But yeah, Kiana asked a great question. If you can't make the British Tea or Fulbright Day, what do you recommend to get that information? So Fulbright Day will be a hybrid event. So that'll be both in person and broadcast via Zoom, and that will be recorded. And so that'll be available on our website. If you RSVP for it, you'll get it, you'll follow up information, or you'll just be able to see it on the YouTube page. The British Tea is a little more informal, and so that's not done via Zoom. I'll do some additional British Award info sessions later in the term, but you know, those are certainly ones you just reach out to me. For all of these awards, we also have Canvas modules, right? And a lot of virtual advising goes on, a lot of resources available there, examples, things like that. So yeah, do a little work on your own, and then reach out to me with questions if you're not able to make the British Tea. All right, last call for questions. Oh, sorry, there was one before Kiana's. I missed it. Yeah, great question. Hajar asked, what exactly is a fellowship? Is it synonymous with internship or postgrad? Oddly enough, somebody in my professional listserv asked that question last week, and they do this for a living, right? What's the official definition here? Fellowship, I lean towards that word because I think it emphasizes the experiential nature. So everything that we're talking about here provides a monetary benefit. So they're going to support travel, cost of living stipend, tuition support, whatever. But also they're going to put you in a cohort. You're going to travel. Maybe you're going to get professional development, but there's going to be some experience component to it as well. So internship, you know, you may or may not be getting paid for that. You may or may not getting your costs covered for that. And you know, fellowships aren't necessarily postgrad, but everything we talked about today are postgraduate fellowships. So meaning after bachelor's degree. So a lot of very similar words, I know, but yeah, if we don't advise on it, we can probably help you with somebody that find you somebody that can. Well, great. Well, again, this will be recorded. Expect a follow-up email from me with additional information, and I hope to see you around. And I look forward to hearing from you. And I hope you found this useful information on a Friday afternoon. So you'll have a wonderful weekend. I appreciate it, and I look forward to hearing from you.